Hey, what's going on with avian flu in cattle? We haven't been hearing much about it, so I thought it's probably gone, and I thought I'd go out and check and see what's going on. Hi, my name's Kim. I talk about all things related to our health, and I put that East Asian medical spin on it because that's what I do in my private practice. If we're going to look at this, let's put some context around it because I forget what all happened with this. The initial outbreak on this was identified about March 24th, 2024. And I first reported on this in June 21st, 2024. So 3 months into this. And in 3 months, we have 118 herds that are infected. Today, we're in October. It's October 17th. And we're 7 months into this avian flu transmission into cattle. Today, the total number of dairy herds that have been infected is 320. I had thought this outbreak really that we had gotten it under control and had it contained, and apparently that is not what's happening. So I said, okay, what's happened in the last 30 days? In the last 30 days, there's been 112 dairy herds infected. So remember, at the beginning of this 3 months, we had 118 herds infected. Today, within 30 days, we have 112 different dairy herds infected. What can we gain from these numbers? Well, not a lot. The only thing that I can really see that we can gain from these numbers is two things. One, oh, look, avian flu in cattle, it's not going away. And two, it's starting to spread more rapidly. Wow. So 1/3 of all the infections that happened over the last 7 months happened in the last month. Okay, well, we know about infections now. COVID taught us all about infections. We know that when the number of infections starts to increase, that we may be going into a problem, right? And when you're looking for more information on the numbers, because I would like more information on these numbers, I would like to understand how many of these herds that are getting infected, how many of them are CAFOs, right? How many of them are concentrated animal feeding operations or factory farms? And how many of them are not? And I would like to understand how many cattle have been compromised out of the total cattle, but those numbers are really difficult to find. Earlier on, you could get more numbers. Right now, that information is being managed by the USDA. So here's the USDA site, and you can see that they say, well, you can download the data. So I thought, well, let's download the data for the total outbreak. In June, I could download this data. So let me download it for you right now. And this is what you get. So we're really not able to look at the data and figure out what this means to our health. And it's not just with our health. There's still other risks with this avian flu in cattle. We still don't know how this thing is transmitting. They have some ideas on how this is spreading. They think that it can spread from cow to cow. They also think that it can spread when they're milking the cows on the equipment. They think that it can be transmitted through personnel, people being shared through facilities, and transporting animals can be a way of movement. Yet, what they did say is that wild birds do not transmit avian flu to cattle, which makes sense, right? Because still in the world today, the United States is the only country that has avian flu in cattle. And these wild birds have been flying through Canada, through Alaska, through Mexico, and we are the only country that has avian flu in cattle. So the question to me still becomes, what is the core cause of avian flu in cattle? I still go back to my episode on the history of feeding poultry manure in cattle feed, because we really haven't addressed that risk, and we're one of the only countries, I don't know of another one, that's feeding poultry manure to cattle. As long as we don't know how this jumped into cattle, we're bound to repeat that in other livestock. That brings me to how this outbreak is being managed in the United States. There's been so much discussion between states' rights and federal rights. So how you're seeing this managed is each state, all 50 states, within the state, they all manage it differently. When it becomes an issue of between the states, then the federal government owns the regulations on that. That leaves two other things that may be important to you and me and our health. And the first is industry is saying that 2% of the sick cattle need to be slaughtered. So September 16th, 6 months after the outbreak, there has been an agreement established that when the USDA inspectors find an infected cow coming into slaughter, they will work with industry on how to dispose of it. That verbiage doesn't make me feel comfortable. What I'd like to see in that verbiage is they will remove the sick cattle from our food chain and then work with industry on how to dispose of it. And then the second thing that has me a little bit concerned is that they are trying to develop a vaccine to address this outbreak. And here's the thing that we should have learned with COVID. The science says do not vaccinate during an active outbreak because you encourage it to mutate. And let's look around us. How many mutations of COVID have we seen? We are constantly being infected with that thing. Every time they put out a new vaccine, new variants start popping up almost immediately. And they're going to look at trying to create a vaccine for cattle. And vaccines into animal livestock have even less testing than vaccines into humans. The potential for this to go really bad is probably pretty high. And there's another aspect of this that isn't being talked about, and that is, what will this do to our export of dairy and cattle? Because Canada has already put import restrictions on cattle from the United States. When France said we're going to vaccinate our ducks against avian flu, we said here in the United States, we said we're not taking your ducks because we can't tell if your duck has avian flu or if it's a vaccine. What is that going to do to our cattle industry if we start vaccinating our cows against avian flu when no other country has avian flu in cattle? Is there anything you can do? Is there a risk here? I really don't know. We have not done enough science to even figure out how these cattle are getting infected, let alone what this strain of avian flu really does in the human body. I do know back in March and April, in my community, there was this really weird food poisoning that was going around, and it would last for about 3 days, and it was a horrible food poisoning. And then all of a sudden this popped up. So who knows what that was about? I haven't seen this since June of 2024. So I do think the government does have a handle on protecting our dairy supply. Yet the thing is it's always easy to accidentally slip up. And there's also the thing about the cattle, the sick cattle that are going to slaughter. There's a couple things that I've done that are a little bit different. I will not buy meat on super sale. I only buy meat from farms that I know. And then when it comes to dairy, I do organics. And there's one dairy that I'm using from California right now. And I actually put that on hold and changed to a dairy from Oregon. those are some of the things that I've started doing. Okay, until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.